I'm Haley Mitchell, 34, and last Thursday, my 8-year-old son Ethan and I were literally kicked out of my parents' Thanksgiving dinner. Why? Because my sister Brooke decided she couldn't stand seeing my face at the table. After years of rivalry and resentment, I watched my parents choose her comfort over our presence, leaving Ethan confused and heartbroken. All our hopes for a peaceful family holiday shattered in an instant. The worst part? Deep down, I'd always known this day would come. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe if family drama sounds all too familiar. Trust me, this holiday story has twists you won't believe. To understand what happened at Thanksgiving, you need to know about the Mitchell family dynamics. I grew up in a comfortable suburban home outside Boston with my parents, Thomas and Catherine Mitchell. My sister Brooke is 3 years younger than me, and from the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family. But beneath that polished exterior, things were always complicated between us. As children, Brooke and I were actually close. We shared a bedroom until I was 10, whispered secrets after bedtime, and created elaborate make-believe worlds in our backyard. There are photos of us in matching outfits, arm in arm, with identical gap-toothed smiles. I remember teaching her how to ride a bike, helping her with kindergarten homework, and defending her against neighborhood bullies. But as we grew older, things began to change. My parents had extremely high expectations for both of us, but we responded differently to the pressure. Academics came naturally to Brooke. She was reading chapter books by first grade, winning spelling bees by third, and breezing through advanced math classes by middle school. I, on the other hand, struggled. Not because I wasn't smart, but because my brain worked differently. What came easily to Brooke required hours of frustration for me. I was more creative and free-spirited. While Brooke excelled at structured assignments and standardized tests, I thrived in art class and creative writing. But in the Mitchell household, an A in art didn't carry the same weight as an A in algebra. Slowly, subtly, my parents began treating us differently. They'd proudly display Brooke's perfect report cards on the refrigerator while mine were met with questions about applying myself more. By the time I reached high school, the favoritism had become impossible to ignore. When Brooke was accepted into the gifted program, my parents threw a celebration dinner and invited the extended family. When I made the school newspaper's editorial team, they merely nodded with mild approval. These differences in reaction weren't lost on either of us. My teenage rebellion wasn't particularly dramatic by most standards, but in our household, it was scandalous. I dyed my honey blonde hair black, started wearing vintage clothes from thrift stores instead of the preppy outfits my mother preferred, and befriended kids my parents considered questionable. Not because they were bad people, but because they were artists, musicians, and free thinkers who didn't fit the Mitchell ideal of success. The first major blowout happened at my high school graduation. I'd been accepted to a state university with a good communications program, while Brooke, still a freshman, was already being courted by Ivy League schools. At what should have been my celebration dinner, my father raised a toast saying, "To Haley, who's found a good school. And to Brooke, who's on track to find a great one." The words stung like a physical slap. When I confronted him later, he genuinely didn't understand why I was upset, insisting he was just stating facts. During college, Brooke and I attempted to repair our relationship. We'd meet for coffee when I came home for breaks, exchange occasional texts, and make efforts to support each other from a distance. It worked to some extent, probably because the physical separation allowed us both to grow without constant comparison. Then came Jason. I met him during my senior year of college at a campus concert. He was charismatic, passionate about social justice, and worked as a freelance photographer. He wasn't on the career track my parents envisioned for their daughter's partners, but I was deeply in love. When I brought him home to meet the family, my parents were politely reserved, but Brooke was openly critical. "He doesn't seem very ambitious," she commented after he left. "What's his 5-year plan?" I defended him fiercely, but her words planted seeds of doubt that I fought to ignore. Jason and I moved in together after graduation, while I started an entry-level position at a marketing firm and he continued his photography. We were happy, living in a tiny apartment, making plans for the future. Brooke, meanwhile, was excelling at Princeton and dating Ryan Bennett, a business school student from a wealthy family who checked every box on my parents' approval list. Looking back, I can see how all these early patterns were setting the stage for the disaster that would eventually unfold. The constant comparisons, the subtle reinforcement that Brooke's choices were better than mine, the gradual erosion of my self-confidence in family situations. But even with this history, I never imagined things would deteriorate to the point where my own parents would ask me and my son to leave their home on Thanksgiving Day. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Mine came in the form of 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test when I was 26. Jason and I had talked about having children someday, but someday was supposed to be after we were married, financially stable, and had checked more boxes off our life goals list. This wasn't the plan. When I told Jason about the pregnancy, he initially seemed supportive, if shocked. We spent nights discussing our options, weighing pros and cons, and ultimately decided to embrace this unexpected turn. For about 2 months, we were cautiously excited, shopping for baby items and brainstorming names. Then, without warning, Jason started pulling away. He took more photography gigs out of town, came home later, and grew distant. 6 months into my pregnancy, he packed his bags, claiming he wasn't ready for fatherhood and needed to find himself. He left me with an apologetic note, half a month's rent, and a baby on the way. Telling my family was excruciating. My mother responded with a resigned sigh, my father with disappointed silence, but Brooke's reaction was the most painful. "This is exactly what happens when you make impulsive choices," she said, not even attempting to hide her smugness. "I told you Jason wasn't reliable. Now what's your plan?" The "I told you so" attitude permeated every conversation with her after that. While my parents reluctantly offered practical support, Brooke seemed to take personal satisfaction in my struggles, as if my situation validated all her life choices by contrast. Her Princeton degree was nearly complete, her relationship with Ryan was progressing toward an inevitable engagement, and her future looked bright and secure. Meanwhile, I was facing single motherhood with limited resources and a career barely off the ground. Financial reality hit hard, and I had to make the difficult decision to temporarily move back into my parents' home during the final months of my pregnancy. Those were some of the most challenging days of my life. My mother alternated between genuine concern and thinly veiled criticism. My father avoided conversations about my situation altogether, retreating to his home office whenever the topic arose. And Brooke, who visited most weekends, treated me like a cautionary tale. "I've shown Ryan your situation as Exhibit A for why we're waiting until after marriage and career establishment to have children," she told me one Sunday afternoon while I was folding baby clothes. The casual cruelty of using my life difficulties as a relationship object lesson left me speechless. Ethan Alexander Mitchell was born on a rainy Tuesday in April. The moment I held him, a fierce protectiveness washed over me. Looking into his tiny face, I made a silent promise that he would never feel the kind of conditional love I'd experienced. He would be valued for exactly who he was, not measured against someone else's achievements. Those early months with a newborn while living under my parents' roof were a special kind of hell. My mother, though helpful with childcare, couldn't resist commentary on my parenting choices. "In my day, we didn't pick up babies every time they cried," or "Are you sure you should be nursing him again so soon?" The constant second-guessing eroded what little confidence I had as a new mother. Brooke's engagement to Ryan came as no surprise, nor did the spectacular 2-carat diamond that accompanied it. What did surprise me was the speed with which my parents transformed from reluctant supporters of my small family to enthusiastic planners of Brooke's perfect wedding. Suddenly, the household conversation revolved entirely around venues, flowers, and guest lists. "We've budgeted $50,000 for the wedding," my father announced at dinner one night, while I sat calculating how many more months of daycare my meager savings could cover. The wedding itself was exactly what you'd expect from the golden child, lavish, picture-perfect, and meticulously planned. I served as bridesmaid, not maid of honor, that went to Brooke's college roommate, and spent the day plastering on a smile while juggling 9-month-old Ethan. The photographer had to be convinced to include us in family photos, with Brooke initially suggesting that a crying baby might ruin the aesthetic. I overheard guests whispering about Thomas and Catherine's other daughter, the single mom, and watched my parents beam with pride as they danced with the newlyweds, their ideal vision of family success realized. By Ethan's first birthday, the contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. Brooke and Ryan purchased a colonial-style home in an exclusive neighborhood, while I was scraping together a deposit for a modest 2-bedroom apartment. They took luxury vacations documented in carefully curated social media posts, while I calculated how many shifts I needed to cover childcare costs. My parents visited Brooke's home weekly for dinner, but came to my apartment only on obligatory occasions like Ethan's birthday. The inequality of treatment became so obvious that even friends commented on it. "Do your parents realize how differently they treat you too?" my college friend Alicia asked after witnessing a family gathering where my mother spent the entire time cooing over Brooke's new kitchen renovation while barely acknowledging Ethan's latest developmental milestone. It wasn't just the material differences that hurt. It was the emotional investment. My parents seemed infinitely interested in Brooke's career advancement, social connections, and daily routines, while conversations about my life felt like obligatory small talk. When I received a promotion at the marketing firm, my father's response was, "Well, that should help with the bills," rather than any expression of pride. Despite everything, I was determined to build a good life for Ethan and myself. I worked hard, advanced from administrative assistant to junior account manager at the marketing firm, created a warm and loving home in our small apartment, and developed a support network of friends who became our chosen family. I dated occasionally, but kept relationships casual, focusing my energy on Ethan and career growth instead. Whenever the weight of family disappointment became too heavy, I reminded myself that breaking this cycle for Ethan was worth every struggle. I would not raise him to believe his worth was tied to external achievements or favorable comparisons. In my home, effort was celebrated as much as outcomes, creativity valued alongside convention, and love was truly unconditional. 8 years passed in what felt like both an eternity and a blink. During that time, life settled into patterns that defined our family dynamics. I advanced in my career, eventually becoming a junior marketing executive with a steady salary that allowed us to live comfortably, if not luxuriously. Ethan grew from a curious toddler into a bright, compassionate 8-year-old with his father's artistic eye and, thankfully, none of his irresponsibility. Meanwhile, Brooke's picture-perfect life continued along its predictable trajectory. 2 years after her wedding, she gave birth to identical twin girls, Emma and Lily. She balanced part-time work as a financial consultant with being the quintessential suburban mother. Their social media featured professional family portraits in coordinated outfits, vacation homes in exclusive locations, and children's birthday parties that looked like they belonged in lifestyle magazines. Our family interactions became limited to major holidays and occasional Sunday dinners that felt more like obligatory rituals than genuine connections. Each gathering followed a predictable script. My parents would fawn over Brooke's children, marvel at Ryan's latest business success, and then, almost as an afterthought, ask cursory questions about Ethan and my work. Brooke developed a particular talent for subtle digs disguised as concern. "It must be so hard raising Ethan without a father figure," she would comment while Ryan tossed a football with his daughters in the background. Or, "Have you considered private school? I know it's expensive, but the public school system is so unpredictable these days," knowing full well that private education wasn't within my budget. The disparity in how my parents treated our children became increasingly obvious. Christmas gifts provided the most glaring evidence. The twins would receive elaborate presents like custom playhouses or junior designer clothing, while Ethan would get practical items like winter coats or educational books. One year, my father gave the girls savings bonds worth $500 each, while Ethan received a $50 gift card to a bookstore. What broke my heart was watching Ethan begin to notice. He never complained, but I caught the flicker of confusion in his eyes when his cousins received lavish attention while he was an afterthought. Once, after a particularly unbalanced Christmas, he asked in the car ride home, "Does Grandpa love Emma and Lily more than me?" I reassured him that wasn't the case, but the question haunted me because I couldn't honestly deny the observable evidence. I tried to shield Ethan from the worst of it, emphasizing the value of our close mother-son relationship and the genuine friends who filled our lives with unconditional love. We developed our own traditions and celebrations that didn't depend on my family's approval or participation. I enrolled him in art classes where his natural talent flourished, and watched with pride as he developed confidence outside the shadow of family comparison. Last Christmas marked a turning point in the deteriorating relationship with my sister. After dinner, while the children played upstairs, Brooke cornered me in the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dishes. "Ryan and I were discussing private high schools for the girls," she began casually. "It's never too early to get on waiting lists for the good ones." "That's nice," I replied neutrally, having learned that minimal engagement was the safest response to these conversation starters. "We could help you look into scholarship options for Ethan," she continued. "Some schools have programs for underprivileged children." The word underprivileged hung in the air between us. My son, who wanted for nothing essential, who was loved and cared for, being categorized as a charity case by his own aunt. "Ethan is doing excellently in his current school," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "His teachers say he's academically gifted, especially in creative subjects." "Of course, creative subjects are important too," Brooke replied with a dismissive wave. "But Ryan and I believe in providing every advantage." I guess it's harder to think about those things when you're focused on just making ends meet. Something in me snapped. Years of accumulated slights crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "My son is thriving," I said firmly. "He's kind, intelligent, and creative. He doesn't need your pity or your husband's connections to succeed. And frankly, I'm tired of your constant implication that my life choices have somehow resulted in a lesser existence." Brooke's expression hardened. "I'm just trying to help, Haley. There's no need to be so defensive. It's not my fault you're jealous of what Ryan and I have built." "Jealous?" I laughed incredulously. "Of your endless striving for external validation? Of teaching your daughters that their worth comes from designer labels and exclusive memberships? I feel sorry for you, Brooke. I really do." The argument escalated until our parents intervened, predictably taking Brooke's side and suggesting I was overreacting. I left early that night, with Ethan confused about the abrupt departure and me fuming with the injustice of it all. For the next 6 months, contact with my family dwindled to occasional text messages from my mother checking in. I didn't attend the twins' birthday celebration in March or the Mother's Day brunch in May. Part of me felt guilty about distancing Ethan from his grandparents and cousins, but a larger part recognized the toxicity of exposing him to an environment where he was constantly made to feel less than. Then, in early November, my mother called with what seemed like a peace offering. "We'd like you and Ethan to come for Thanksgiving," she said tentatively. "Your father misses you, though he's too stubborn to say it. And the girls have been asking about their cousin." I hesitated, remembering the Christmas debacle and countless other painful gatherings. "I don't know, Mom. Things got pretty ugly last time." "Brooke feels terrible about that," she insisted, though I highly doubted Brooke had expressed any such sentiment. "She wants to move forward." "We all do. It's Thanksgiving, Haley. Family should be together." The appeal to holiday tradition was effective, especially when Ethan overheard the conversation and lit up at the mention of seeing his cousins. Despite my misgivings, I agreed, partly for Ethan's sake and partly from a persistent, foolish hope that this time might be different. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the visit with perhaps too much optimism. Ethan and I baked a pumpkin pie from scratch following my grandmother's recipe. I splurged on new outfits for both of us, wanting to present our best selves. I even rehearsed neutral conversation topics and practiced calming breathing techniques for when Brooke inevitably said something provocative. As we drove to my parents' house on Thanksgiving morning, Ethan chatted excitedly about playing with his cousins, while I silently hoped that for once, just once, we might experience a holiday where we truly felt like equal members of the family. How naive that hope would prove to be. Thanksgiving Day dawned crisp and clear, with that perfect New England fall chill that makes you appreciate a warm kitchen and the promise of comfort food. Ethan was up early, helping me put the finishing touches on our pie, his face serious with concentration as he carefully arranged the decorative crust edges I'd taught him to make. "Do you think Emma and Lily will like the pie, Mom?" he asked, pride evident in his voice. He'd done most of the mixing himself, and at 8 years old, considered it his masterpiece. "They'll love it, buddy," I assured him, ruffling his hair. "And if they don't, more for us, right?" We arrived at my parents' suburban colonial at precisely 1 p.m. as requested. My father's luxury sedan and mother's crossover were in the driveway, but no sign yet of Brooke's Range Rover. A small mercy, at least we'd have time to settle in before the tension inevitably arrived with my sister. My mother answered the door, dressed impeccably as always in a cashmere sweater and perfectly pressed slacks, her silver-streaked hair styled in its usual bob. "There you are," she said, offering her cheek for a kiss. "Thomas. Haley and Ethan are here." Her smile was warm but tinged with something like nervousness. My father emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Right on time," he noted, which from him was high praise. He awkwardly patted Ethan's shoulder. "Getting tall, young man." "I grew 2 inches since summer, Grandpa," Ethan informed him seriously. "My teacher measured everyone in class." "Is that so?" "Well, keep that up and you'll be as tall as your Uncle Ryan." Even this innocent comment felt loaded to me, the comparison to Ryan rather than to his actual grandfather or even his absent father. But I swallowed my irritation. This day was about new beginnings. Ethan proudly carried our pie to the kitchen, where my mother was orchestrating the dinner preparations with military precision. "We made it from scratch," he announced. "I did the mixing and helped with the crust design." My mother examined it with a polite smile. "How creative. I'm sure it will be delicious. You can set it over there with the desserts." There was a side table already laden with professionally made pies and an elaborate centerpiece. Our homemade creation looked decidedly homespun beside them. "Can I help with anything, Mom?" I offered, determined to be useful. "Everything's under control," she replied, checking something in the oven. "The turkey's been in since morning. Brooke's bringing the cranberry relish and her sweet potato casserole. You know how everyone loves her recipe." I bit my tongue against pointing out that Brooke's recipe involved opening cans and adding marshmallows. Instead, I guided Ethan to the living room where my father had returned to watching football. The next hour passed in awkward small talk. My father occasionally commented on the game, I shared sanitized stories from work, and Ethan, growing restless, asked repeatedly when his cousins would arrive. At 2:30, half an hour before the scheduled dinner time, the doorbell chimed. My mother practically sprinted to answer it, her face transforming into genuine delight as Brooke's family entered. "There they are," she exclaimed, embracing each twin as they burst past her in matching harvest-themed dresses. "And don't you both look beautiful? Ryan, so good to see you." "Brooke, darling, you look wonderful." Brooke did look wonderful, as always. Designer jeans, cashmere wrap, hair and makeup flawless despite supposedly spending the morning cooking. She carried a store-bought pie in one hand and a ceramic dish that presumably contained the famous sweet potato casserole in the other. "Sorry we're running late," she announced to the room. "The girls had their riding lessons this morning, and you know how traffic gets on holidays." Her eyes landed on me and Ethan, and her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Haley. You made it." "And Ethan, wow, you're getting so big." The twins, Emma and Lily, spotted their cousin and ran over, their initial excitement genuine. Despite the adult tensions, the children had always gotten along well in their limited interactions. "Ethan. Come see what Grandpa got us." Emma tugged at his hand, pulling him toward the sunroom that had been converted into a play area for the girls' visits. As the children disappeared, the adult dynamic settled into their familiar pattern. Ryan talked business with my father, Brooke followed my mother to the kitchen offering to help while actually taking control, and I hovered awkwardly between groups, not quite fitting anywhere. I finally decided to be useful and began setting the formal dining table with the good china and silver that only appeared for special occasions. I was carefully arranging water glasses when Brooke entered with a stack of linen napkins. "Mom asked me to bring these," she said, placing them beside me. She paused, seeming to search for conversation. "So, how are things? Work going well?" "It's good," I replied cautiously. "I'm leading the social media campaign for that new organic food delivery service. It's challenging but interesting." "That's nice," she said with the particular tone that suggested my career achievements were quaint compared to Ryan's corporate success. "We've been so busy. Ryan's company is expanding to Europe, and we're considering a second home in London to make the commute easier for him." "Sounds exciting," I managed, folding napkins with perhaps more force than necessary. "It is, though timing is tricky with the girls' school schedules. Speaking of which, have you thought more about Ethan's education options? Those formative years pass so quickly." And there it was, barely 5 minutes of conversation before she circled back to implicating my parenting choices were lacking. "Ethan's school has an excellent gifted program," I said firmly. "His art teacher is submitting his work to a regional student exhibition." Brooke raised an eyebrow. "Art is a wonderful hobby, of course. The girls take piano and ballet." "But I meant academically. College preparations really begin in elementary school these days." Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't involve telling my sister exactly where she could put her educational advice, my mother called everyone to the dining room. The turkey had been carved, side dishes arranged, and the formal Thanksgiving meal was ready to begin. The seating arrangement spoke volumes. My father at the head, my mother at the foot. Brooke and Ryan on one side with the twins, Ethan and I on the other. The physical embodiment of how our family had divided. My father said a brief grace, giving thanks for family gathered together, good health, and prosperity. As dishes began circulating, the conversation flowed around safe topics: the unseasonably warm fall, an upcoming community festival, the twins' horse riding progress. Everything was proceeding with forced pleasantness until my mother asked Ryan about his recent business trip. "Paris was productive," he answered between bites of turkey. "We're finalizing that acquisition I mentioned. Should close by year-end, which means a significant bonus." He winked at Brooke. "Maybe that vacation home in Aspen we've been discussing." "That's wonderful," my mother beamed. "You work so hard, you deserve it." Speaking of hard work, my father interjected, turning surprisingly toward me. "Haley was telling me about her marketing campaign. Sounds like you're doing well." This unexpected acknowledgement caught me off guard. "Thanks, Dad. It's been intense but rewarding." "Haley's always been creative," my mother added, in what seemed like an actual compliment. Brooke's expression soured slightly at this shift in attention. She took a deliberate sip of wine before asking, "How are you managing the work-life balance? It must be difficult as a single parent. Especially financially." My grip tightened on my fork. "We manage just fine. My company has excellent benefits and flexible hours." "That's good to hear," she continued, her tone dripping with false concern. "Mom mentioned you had to skip the girls' birthday party because of budget constraints. We would have been happy to help, you know." The table fell silent. I stared at her in disbelief, then turned to my mother, who suddenly became very interested in her cranberry sauce. "I didn't attend the birthday party because we had prior commitments," I said carefully, aware of the children listening. "And I've never asked for financial help." "Of course not," Brooke replied smoothly. "I just meant the offer is there. Family helps family." "Right, Mom?" My mother nodded uncomfortably. "More sweet potatoes, anyone?" But Brooke wasn't finished. "Actually, Ryan and I were talking, and we'd be happy to set up an education fund for Ethan. Like the ones we have for the girls. College is so expensive these days, and without two incomes. Brooke, Ryan murmured warningly, casting a glance at the children. What? I'm trying to be supportive, she insisted, though her expression suggested otherwise. It can't be easy for Haley, always struggling to keep up. The simmering tension that had been building for years finally boiled over. I am not struggling, I said, my voice low but intense. And I don't need your charity or your condescension packaged as concern. There's no need to get defensive, Brooke replied, her tone sharpening. I'm just being realistic about your situation. My situation? You mean the life I've built independently, without riding on anyone's coattails or measuring my worth by my husband's income? Gasps sounded around the table. Even Ethan looked up from his plate, eyes wide. Girls, my mother interjected desperately, why don't you take Ethan to show him your new playhouse? But it was too late to shield the children from the escalating conflict. I have never needed to ride on anyone's coattails, Brooke hissed, abandoning her composed facade. Some of us make smart choices and reap the rewards. Others make impulsive decisions and then resent those who didn't. The only thing I resent, I shot back, is the constant implication that my life and my son are somehow lesser because they don't fit your narrow definition of success. Ethan tugged at my sleeve, his voice small. Mom? Are you and Aunt Brooke fighting about me? My heart broke hearing the concern in his voice. No, buddy. Not about you. Never about you. But Brooke wasn't finished. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I can't do this anymore. Every holiday, every family gathering, it's the same thing. Haley's resentment and martyrdom act poisoning everything. Brooke, please, my mother pleaded. It's Thanksgiving. Exactly. And I'm thankful I don't have to pretend anymore. She turned to my parents, her ultimatum falling like a hammer. It's her or me. I won't subject my children to this toxicity anymore. If she's invited to future family events, we won't be attending. The silence that followed was deafening. I waited for my parents to defend me, to point out the absurdity of Brooke's demand. Instead, my father cleared his throat and said the words that would forever change our family dynamic. Haley, perhaps it would be best if you and Ethan continued your Thanksgiving elsewhere this year. For the sake of peace. I stared at him in disbelief. You're asking us to leave? Your daughter and grandson? My mother wouldn't meet my eyes, but whispered, I'm sorry, Haley. We'll call you tomorrow. Brooke's triumphant expression said everything her words didn't. She had won, as she always did. With shaking hands, I helped Ethan from his chair. Come on, buddy. We're going home. But I didn't get to have pie, he protested, confusion and hurt evident in his voice. We'll have pie at home, I promised, though we both knew our homemade creation remained on the side table, untouched. As we gathered our coats, my father followed, his expression stony. We want to avoid drama, especially with the children present. I'm sure you understand. I didn't understand. Not how parents could choose one child so completely over another. Not how the comfort of adult twins who had everything could outweigh the feelings of a young boy being rejected by his family. Not how the turkey was still warm on our plates as we were shown the door. The last thing I saw before the door closed behind us was Ethan looking back at his cousins, his small face crumpled in confusion, silently asking what he had done wrong to deserve being sent away on Thanksgiving. The drive home from my parents' house was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Ethan sat in the back seat, silent tears streaming down his face as he stared out the window. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, fighting back my own tears. Parents are supposed to shield their children from pain, not expose them to it. Yet here I was, driving away from a family dinner where my son had just witnessed the most profound rejection imaginable. Did I do something bad, Mom? Ethan finally whispered, his voice small and broken. The question pierced my heart like a physical pain. No, baby. Absolutely not. You did nothing wrong. I caught his eye in the rearview mirror. This is adult stuff between me and Aunt Brooke and Grandma and Grandpa. It has nothing to do with you. Then why didn't they want us to stay for dinner? Grandma always says family is the most important thing on Thanksgiving. Out of the mouths of babes. The hypocrisy laid bare in one innocent observation. Sometimes adults don't live up to their own values, I said carefully. And sometimes family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who treats you with love and kindness. We pulled into our apartment complex, the modesty of our home never feeling more apparent than after leaving my parents' affluent neighborhood. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me as I turned off the engine. Here we were, on Thanksgiving evening, with no dinner, no family, and a heartbroken child. I'm sorry, Ethan, I said, turning to face him properly. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. I thought. I hoped things would be different this time. He unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned forward to wrap his arms around my neck, his generosity of spirit overwhelming me. It's okay, Mom. We don't need them to have Thanksgiving. His resilience brought fresh tears to my eyes. You're right. We absolutely don't. We climbed the stairs to our apartment, the cheerful fall wreath on our door a reminder of the holiday spirit I'd felt that morning. Inside, the emptiness of the apartment seemed to echo. No turkey roasting, no festive table settings, no pumpkin pie, which remained, uneaten, on my parents' side table. Just the ordinary Thursday evening of a mother and son who had been deemed unworthy of family celebration. I opened the refrigerator, surveying our options. Let's see what we can put together for our own Thanksgiving feast. The pickings were slim, some leftover pasta, half a loaf of bread, eggs, and a frozen pizza I kept for emergencies. Not exactly traditional holiday fare. Ethan peered around me. Can we have pizza? And maybe make cookies for dessert? That sounds perfect, I agreed, grateful for his ability to adapt. Why don't you change into comfortable clothes while I preheat the oven? As Ethan disappeared into his room, I leaned against the kitchen counter and finally allowed myself a moment to process. The scene replayed in my mind: Brooke's calculated provocation, my parents' betrayal, the humiliation of being asked to leave. Years of accumulated slights and favoritism had culminated in this ultimate rejection, witnessed by an innocent child who deserved so much better. I was still standing there when my phone rang. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought it might be my parents calling to apologize. Instead, Alicia Martinez's name flashed on the screen, my colleague who had become a close friend over the years. Happy Thanksgiving, she greeted cheerfully. Just checking in to see how the family dinner went. The simple question broke the dam. Between sobs, I related the disaster that had unfolded. They did what? Alicia's outrage was palpable. On Thanksgiving? With Ethan right there? It was awful, I confirmed, keeping my voice low so Ethan wouldn't overhear. He's trying to be brave, but he's devastated. What kind of grandparents kick out their own grandson before dessert? The kind who don't deserve him, Alicia said firmly. Or you. Listen, we're just sitting down to dinner. There's plenty of food. Come over. Oh, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, it's a rescue mission. My family always has too much food anyway, and my kids would love to see Ethan. Please, Haley. No one should be alone after something like this. Before I could formulate another objection, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see a message from my mother. I'm sorry things got out of hand. Your father and I think it's best if we all take some time to cool down. We'll call next week to discuss moving forward. Hope you found somewhere for dinner. The casual cruelty of that last sentence, as if being expelled from a family Thanksgiving was a minor inconvenience, cemented my decision. Actually, Alicia, if you're sure it's not an imposition, we'd love to come. After explaining the change of plans to Ethan, who perked up at the mention of Alicia's children whom he knew from company picnics, we quickly refreshed ourselves and headed out. The contrast between our departure from my parents' house and our arrival at the Martinez home couldn't have been more stark. Alicia met us at the door with warm hugs and genuine delight. Come in, come in. We're just getting started. Her modest home was bursting with life, extended family filled every corner, music played in the background, delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen, and laughter punctuated the steady hum of conversation. No formality, no tension, just authentic celebration. "Everyone," Alicia announced, "this is my friend Haley and her son Ethan. They're joining our Thanksgiving this year." Instead of awkward politeness, we were met with genuine welcome. Alicia's mother immediately handed me a glass of wine and ushered Ethan toward the children's table where Alicia's kids made room for him. Her father insisted I take a seat next to him and launched into a story about his first job that had everyone laughing. As plates were passed and conversations flowed, I watched Ethan gradually relax. Within 30 minutes, he was giggling with the other children, the hurt of earlier events temporarily forgotten. No one here measured his worth against anyone else's. No one questioned his place at the table. He was simply welcomed, as was I. During dessert, a magnificent array of pies, cakes, and traditional Mexican sweets, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother: "Brooke and Ryan are staying the night with the girls. They send their regrets about the misunderstanding. Hope you and Ethan aren't too disappointed." Misunderstanding. As if what happened was a simple miscommunication rather than a deliberate exclusion. As if our feelings were an afterthought to Brooke's comfort. The message crystallized everything wrong with our family dynamic. I showed the text to Alicia when we had a moment alone. "That's not an apology," she observed, "that's a justification." "Exactly," I sighed. "And the sad part is, they probably don't even realize how hurtful it is." "What will you do now?" she asked gently. I watched Ethan across the room, helping Alicia's youngest son build a tower of blocks, his face alight with simple joy. "Set better boundaries. For both our sakes. I've spent years hoping for acceptance that's never going to come." As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave, Alicia's mother pressed containers of leftovers into my hands. "For tomorrow," she insisted. "And next time, come earlier so I can teach Ethan to make tamales." The easy inclusion brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you. For everything." On the drive home, Ethan was thoughtful. "Alicia's family is really nice, Mom." Nobody yelled or made anyone leave. "Yes, they are nice," I agreed, heart aching at the implied comparison. "And they have different traditions than Grandma and Grandpa. Like those sweet bread things and the special prayers." "That's because Alicia's family is Mexican-American. Different families have different traditions." He was quiet for a moment. "Can we make our own traditions? Ones that are just for us?" "Absolutely," I promised. "Starting right now." That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Will Grandma and Grandpa still want to see me after today?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "They love you, Ethan. But sometimes adults make mistakes and hurt people's feelings without meaning to. What happened today wasn't right, and it wasn't fair to you. I'm going to talk to them about it." "Will we still go to their house for Christmas?" The innocent question highlighted the difficult decisions ahead. "I don't know, buddy. But I promise you this, wherever we are for Christmas, it will be with people who make us feel welcomed and loved." After he fell asleep, I sat alone in our living room, processing the day's events. My phone showed 3 missed calls from my mother, but I wasn't ready to have that conversation. Instead, I sent a simple text: "Ethan and I are safe and had dinner with friends. We need some time. Please respect that." Then I did something I should have done years ago. I started researching therapists who specialized in family dynamics and toxic relationships. Because if today had shown me anything, it was that this cycle wouldn't break itself. For Ethan's sake, and for my own, it was time to heal from the inside out. The morning after Thanksgiving dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. Ethan slept in, emotionally exhausted from the previous day's ordeal. I sat at our small kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee, scrolling through therapist profiles on my laptop, when my phone rang. My mother's number. After 4 rings, I reluctantly answered. "Hello?" Haley, thank goodness," my mother's voice sounded strained. "We've been so worried. You didn't answer our calls last night." "We were with friends," I replied neutrally. "As I texted you." "Yes, well." She paused. "Your father and I would like to see you and Ethan today. To clear the air." Brooke and her family left this morning for their ski weekend. Of course they did. The convenient timing wasn't lost on me. Now that the preferred daughter had departed, they had space for the backup family. "I don't think that's a good idea right now, Mom." "Please, Haley." Her voice cracked slightly. "Yesterday was unfortunate. We need to talk about it. As a family." The old pull of obligation tugged at me, that lifelong conditioning to smooth things over, to be the accommodating one, to make peace regardless of the cost to my dignity. But something had fundamentally shifted inside me. "If we're going to talk, it needs to be on neutral ground," I said firmly. "Not at your house." "All right," she agreed quickly. "There's that diner near you, Brighton's. Would brunch there work? Say, 11? I glanced at the clock. That gave me 2 hours to prepare Ethan and myself for what would undoubtedly be a difficult conversation. "Fine. But Mom, I need you to understand something. What happened yesterday wasn't just unfortunate. It was hurtful and damaging, especially to Ethan. If we're going to move forward, things need to change." Her silence spoke volumes, but finally she said, "We'll see you at 11, and hung up. When Ethan woke up, I explained that Grandma and Grandpa wanted to talk to us about what happened. "Are they going to say sorry?" he asked, his 8-year-old sense of justice straightforward. "I hope so, buddy. But even if they don't, I want you to know it's okay for you to tell them how you felt about yesterday. Your feelings matter." He nodded solemnly. "Can I wear my superhero shirt? It makes me brave." "Absolutely." We arrived at Brighton's diner precisely at 11, Ethan in his Captain America t-shirt under a button-up sweater, a compromise between comfort and the formality my parents expected. They were already seated in a booth near the back, my father checking his watch as we approached. "You're here," my mother said with evident relief, half rising for awkward cheek kisses. "Ethan, sweetheart, would you like chocolate chip pancakes? I remember those are your favorite." "Actually," I interjected gently, "Ethan prefers blueberry pancakes now. Has for about a year." My mother's smile faltered. "Oh. I didn't realize." This small exchange encapsulated so much. Their assumption of knowledge without actual attention to who Ethan was becoming. We ordered blueberry pancakes for Ethan, omelets for the adults, and an uncomfortable silence descended. My father finally broke it. "About yesterday," he began, straightening his silverware. "Things got out of hand. We regret how it ended." "Not quite an apology," I noted. "A regret about the outcome, not the action itself." "You asked us to leave," I said directly. "In the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. Because Brooke gave you an ultimatum." My mother glanced nervously at Ethan, who was coloring on his children's menu but clearly listening. "Perhaps we should discuss the details later." "No," I said firmly. "Ethan was there. He experienced what happened. He deserves to be part of this conversation." My father shifted uncomfortably. We were put in an impossible position. Brooke was very upset. And her feelings mattered more than ours, I finished for him. "That's been the pattern for as long as I can remember." "That's not fair, Haley," my mother protested. "We don't play favorites." The statement was so absurd I actually laughed. "Mom, you've been playing favorites since we were children. The different reactions to our accomplishments. The unequal gifts. The constant comparisons. Yesterday was just the most extreme example." "We've always supported you," my father insisted. "Even when you made challenging choices." "You mean when I became a single mother?" I kept my voice level despite the anger bubbling beneath. "That challenging choice resulted in your grandson." The same grandson you kicked out of Thanksgiving dinner. Ethan looked up at this, his young face serious. It made me really sad, Grandpa. I didn't get to have any pie. The simple statement hit harder than any adult accusation could have. My father had the grace to look ashamed. We're sorry about that, son, he said, reaching awkwardly to pat Ethan's hand. Next time you visit, you can have 2 pieces of pie. That's not the point, I said, frustration mounting. This isn't about pie. It's about Ethan feeling unwelcome in his own family. It's about years of treating Brooke's family as more important than us. That's simply not true, my mother insisted, though her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Isn't it? Last Christmas, you gave the twins savings bonds worth $500 each. Ethan got a $50 gift card. When he had his art show at school last spring, neither of you attended, but you drove 3 hours to see Emma and Lily's dance recital the following weekend. We had prior commitments, my father said defensively. You always do when it comes to us. I took a deep breath, centering myself. Look, I'm not here to list grievances. I'm here because I want you to understand that things need to change. I won't expose Ethan to an environment where he's treated as less than. He deserves better. Our food arrived, creating a momentary reprieve from the tension. As we began eating, my mother attempted a lighter topic, asking about Ethan's current school projects. He brightened, telling them about his art being submitted to a regional exhibition. My parents made appropriate noises of approval, though I noticed my father's question about whether he was also doing well in math. Some patterns run deep. We were halfway through our meal when the diner's bell chimed. I glanced up automatically, then froze. Brooke stood in the entrance, scanning the restaurant until her eyes landed on our table. Her expression hardened as she marched toward us. I thought you'd left for your ski trip, my mother said, clearly flustered. We postponed until this afternoon when Dad texted me about meeting Haley, Brooke replied, sliding uninvited into the booth beside my father. I thought I should be part of this conversation. How considerate, I muttered, instinctively moving closer to Ethan. Brooke ignored my comment, signaling for coffee. So, what have I missed? The usual list of complaints about how unfair life is? Brooke, my father warned, we're trying to have a constructive discussion. Which is exactly why I'm here, she insisted. This family can't move forward if we're constantly walking on eggshells around Haley's sensitivities. The injustice of her characterization made my blood boil. My sensitivities include not wanting my son publicly humiliated and ejected from a family dinner. It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't overreacted to a simple offer of help, Brooke countered. Help? I echoed incredulously. You were deliberately trying to make me feel inadequate, as you've done consistently for years. That's ridiculous, she scoffed. Just because your life choices have led to financial limitations doesn't mean offers of assistance are attacks. Mom, Ethan whispered, shrinking against me. Aunt Brooke looks really mad. It's okay, buddy, I assured him, though it clearly wasn't. I turned back to my sister. This is exactly what I mean. You can't even acknowledge the possibility that your behavior might be hurtful. What I acknowledge, Brooke said, leaning forward, is that you've been jealous of me since we were teenagers. Jealous of my academic success, jealous of my marriage, jealous of my life. And instead of taking responsibility for your own choices, you've turned me into the villain of your story. The accusation hung in the air between us. In the past, I might have backed down, might have accepted her framing to keep the peace. But not today. I've never been jealous of your life, Brooke, I said quietly. I've been hurt by your constant implication that mine isn't good enough. That Ethan and I aren't good enough. I never said that, she protested, though less confidently. You didn't have to say it. It's in every comparison, every backhanded compliment, every helpful suggestion that carries the subtext that we're lacking. I looked directly at her. What I don't understand is why. Why does it matter so much to you that your life choices are validated as superior to mine? Something flickered in Brooke's expression, a momentary crack in her perfect facade. For the first time, I glimpsed uncertainty beneath her polished exterior. "That's absurd," she said, but the words lacked her usual conviction. My mother, apparently sensing the shift, intervened. "Girls, please. We're in public." "No, Mom," I pressed, a realization dawning. "I want to know. What is it about my life that threatens you so much, Brooke?" "Threatens me?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Your studio apartment and single mom struggle doesn't exactly inspire envy." "Then why the constant need to prove your life is better? Why the ultimatums and dramatic exits whenever the attention isn't centered on you and your family?" Brooke's composure wavered visibly. She glanced at our parents, then back at me. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I said softly. "Because it seems to me that someone truly content with their choices doesn't need to constantly validate them by diminishing others." A tense silence followed. Then, surprisingly, my father spoke up. "Brooke, is there something going on that we should know about?" Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "Between you and Ryan," he clarified. "You've seemed tense lately." The question clearly caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then reached for her water glass with a slightly trembling hand. "Everything's fine." But it obviously wasn't. In that moment, I saw my sister really saw her, perhaps for the first time in years. Beneath the designer clothes and perfect hair was someone desperately maintaining appearances. The realization didn't bring satisfaction, just a profound sadness for all the years we'd spent as adversaries rather than allies. "Brooke," I said gently, "whatever's happening, it doesn't have to change how Mom and Dad see you. You don't have to be perfect." Her eyes filled unexpectedly with tears. "You don't understand. You've always been the brave one, doing whatever you wanted regardless of expectations. I'm the one who has to maintain the standard." "What standard?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The successful daughter. The one who does everything right." She looked at our parents, a lifetime of pressure evident in her expression. "If I'm not that, then what am I?" The vulnerability of the question hung in the air. My parents exchanged troubled glances, perhaps recognizing for the first time the impact of their expectations. "You're our daughter," my mother said finally. "That's enough." But years of conditioning couldn't be undone with a single reassurance. Brooke quickly composed herself, wiping away the evidence of emotion. "This is ridiculous. I didn't come here for therapy." "Maybe you should, though," I suggested, not unkindly. "It's been helping me understand a lot about our family dynamics." She stiffened. "I don't need help." "Everyone needs help sometimes," Ethan piped up unexpectedly. "My teacher says that's what makes us human." The wisdom from this small boy momentarily silenced the adults at the table. Brooke looked at him with an unreadable expression, then abruptly stood. "I need to get back. Ryan's waiting with the girls." She paused, then added with visible effort, "I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. It was inappropriate to ask you to leave." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of the deeper issues, but it was something. A crack in the wall between us. "Thank you," I said simply. After she left, an awkward silence descended over our table. My father cleared his throat. "Well, that was unexpected." "It shouldn't have been," I said quietly. "We've all been playing roles for so long, never really seeing each other." My mother reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. "We want to do better, Haley. With you and with Ethan." "I want that too," I admitted. "But it has to be different this time. Real change, not just temporary peacekeeping." "What do you need from us?" my father asked, the directness of the question surprising me. I thought carefully before answering. "Respect. Equal treatment for Ethan compared to his cousins. Acknowledgement of our life choices without judgment. And most importantly, no more allowing Brooke to dictate the terms of our family relationship." They exchanged glances, and for the first time in my adult life, I saw them truly considering my perspective. "We can try," my mother said finally. "It won't be perfect right away. But we can try." As we prepared to leave, Ethan hugged his grandparents with genuine affection, their obvious relief at this simple gesture highlighting how close they'd come to damaging that relationship permanently. Walking to the car, Ethan took my hand. "Mom? Are we going to be okay with Grandma and Grandpa now?" I squeezed his small fingers. "We're working on it, buddy. And you know what? That's a good start." The week following Thanksgiving passed in a blur of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Ethan returned to school, I immersed myself in work, and outwardly our routine continued unchanged. Yet internally, everything had shifted. The confrontation at the diner had torn open wounds long covered by polite avoidance, exposing both festering hurts and, unexpectedly, possibilities for healing. On Wednesday evening, as Ethan and I shared dinner at our small kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. "Family Christmas party at my place, December 23rd. You and Ethan are officially invited. Non-negotiable. Bring that killer spinach dip." I smiled at the message, warmth spreading through me at this simple inclusion. "What's that smile for, Mom?" Ethan asked, looking up from his homework. "Alicia invited us to her family Christmas party," I told him. "Remember how much fun we had at their Thanksgiving?" His face lit up. "Can we go? Will Miguel be there?" Miguel was Alicia's nephew who had bonded with Ethan over a shared love of astronomy. Yes to both questions. "And apparently I'm on spinach dip duty." "Your spinach dip is way better than Aunt Brooke's," he declared loyally, then paused, a shadow crossing his face. "Are we still going to Grandma and Grandpa's for Christmas too?" The question hung in the air between us, weighted with the unspoken aftermath of Thanksgiving. I put down my fork, giving the moment the attention it deserved. "I don't know yet, buddy. Grandma and Grandpa say they want to make things better, but we need to see if their actions match their words. What do you think? Do you want to go?" He considered this with the serious deliberation only children can give to important questions. "I want to see my cousins," he said finally. "But I don't want anybody to be mean to you again." His protective instinct brought a lump to my throat. "That's very sweet of you. How about this, we'll wait and see how things go in the next few weeks before deciding. And no matter what, we'll create our own special Christmas traditions." "Like what?" he asked, interest piqued. "Well, we could make homemade ornaments for our tree. Have a Christmas movie marathon with hot chocolate. Maybe volunteer at the community center dinner. Can we invite people who don't have families to celebrate with us?" he suggested, his natural empathy shining through. "That's a beautiful idea," I said, marveling at his compassionate heart. "We absolutely can." The following day, a delivery arrived at our apartment, a large package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a carefully preserved photo album I'd never seen before, filled with childhood pictures of Brooke and me. Notes in my mother's handwriting identified each image: Haley's first day of kindergarten, Brooke and Haley building sandcastles, Cape Cod, 1996, the girls in the school talent show. A handwritten note was tucked into the front cover. "Haley, going through these old photos reminded me of how close you girls once were, and how much joy you both brought to our lives. I realize now that somewhere along the way, we lost sight of what truly matters. The comparisons and expectations that seemed important then look foolish in retrospect. I can't change the past, but I hope it's not too late to build a better future. With love, Mom." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of all the issues between us, but it was an olive branch extended with genuine feeling. I spent that evening paging through the album, showing Ethan pictures of his mother as a gap-toothed child with scraped knees and wild hair. "You look happy," he observed, pointing to a photo of Brooke and me with our arms around each other, ice cream smeared across both our faces. "We were," I said softly. "For a long time, we really were." The next week, I met my mother for coffee, just the two of us, a rare occurrence in recent years. She seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable without my father's authoritative presence or Brooke's confident assertion setting the tone. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, fidgeting with her cup. "And for the note about the photo album." "It was a thoughtful gift," I acknowledged. "It brought back a lot of memories." She nodded, gathering her courage. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our talk at the diner. About the ways we might have contributed to the tension between you girls. The different expectations, the comparisons. It wasn't intentional, but that doesn't mean it wasn't harmful." The admission stunned me. My mother had always defended their parenting choices as beyond reproach. This acknowledgement, however tentative, represented a significant shift. "It did hurt," I confirmed gently. Feeling like I was always being measured against Brooke's achievements. Like my different strengths weren't valued as highly. "Your father and we had such defined ideas of success," she said, looking down at her hands. "Academic excellence, professional achievement, financial security. We pushed those values without considering that there are many ways to live a fulfilling life." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "Your way isn't wrong, Haley. Different, yes, but not wrong." The validation I'd sought for years brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm trying," she said simply. "With your father, it's harder. He's more set in his ways. But he's trying too, in his own fashion. He asked if Ethan might like to go fishing when the weather warms up. Just the two of them." The thought of my buttoned-up father taking Ethan fishing was both surprising and touching. "I think Ethan would love that." We spent the next hour talking more openly than we had in years. About my work, about Ethan's interests beyond academics, about her own regrets and hopes. Nothing was magically resolved, but bridges were being built, slowly and with care. "And Brooke?" I finally asked. "Have you spoken with her since the diner?" My mother's expression grew troubled. "She's going through some things. She and Ryan are in couples counseling. It seems their perfect marriage has been anything but." The news didn't bring satisfaction, only a complicated sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear that. She probably won't admit it anytime soon, but I think seeing you stand up for yourself and Ethan affected her deeply. Made her question some of her own choices." My mother reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. "You've always had a strength she envies, Haley. The courage to live authentically, on your own terms." The irony wasn't lost on me that the very independence my family had often criticized might be the quality Brooke secretly admired. Life had a strange way of reframing our perceived weaknesses as unexpected strengths. As December progressed, I continued my therapy sessions, working through years of accumulated family dynamics. My therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me establish healthier boundaries while still leaving room for reconciliation where possible. "Healing doesn't mean there won't be setbacks," she cautioned during one session. "Family patterns are deeply ingrained. The important thing is how you respond to those setbacks." Her words proved prophetic when, a week before Christmas, my father called to discuss holiday arrangements. "We thought you and Ethan might join us for Christmas Eve," he said stiffly, still uncomfortable with direct emotional conversations. "Brooke and her family will come for Christmas Day instead. Separate celebrations this year, while we work things out." The arrangement was clearly designed to avoid another confrontation, which felt both like a positive recognition of current limitations and a disappointing postponement of true resolution. But it was also an acknowledgement that my boundaries mattered, a significant step forward. "That sounds reasonable," I agreed. "Thank you for suggesting it." "It was your mother's idea," he admitted. "But I think it's for the best. For now." The qualifier "for now" contained its own kind of hope that eventually, our fractured family might find a way to gather together again, with new understanding and respect. On December 23rd, Ethan and I attended Alicia's Christmas party, bringing not only the requested spinach dip but also homemade cookies Ethan had decorated with painstaking care. The Martinez home was filled with extended family, friends, and neighbors, a vibrant, noisy celebration that embraced us without question. Watching Ethan laughing with Miguel and the other children, I felt a profound gratitude for this chosen family that had appeared when we needed it most. These connections weren't defined by blood or obligation, but by genuine affection and mutual respect, the very qualities I hope to cultivate in our biological family relationships moving forward. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Alicia found me watching the children from a quiet corner. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, handing me a glass of wine. "I was just thinking about family," I replied. "How it comes in so many different forms." She nodded, understanding without explanation. "Sometimes the family we choose is as important as the family we're born into." "Exactly. And sometimes the hardest thing is finding a way to honor both." On Christmas Eve, Ethan and I arrived at my parents' house with carefully wrapped gifts and cautious optimism. The evening wasn't perfect. My father still occasionally made comments that revealed old thought patterns. My mother sometimes lapsed into comparing our lives to Brooke's. But there were also moments of genuine connection. My father listened with real interest as Ethan described his art project. My mother asked thoughtful questions about my latest marketing campaign. We played board games without the underlying current of competition that had characterized family gatherings in the past. As we prepared to leave, my mother pressed a small package into my hands. "Open this one now," she suggested. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with 2 intertwined circles. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "It represents connection," she explained. "Even when paths diverge, they can come together again in new ways." The symbolism wasn't subtle, but the sentiment behind it was sincere. "Thank you, Mom. I'll treasure it." When we returned home, Ethan helped me hang our stockings, store-bought ones I'd had for years, alongside new hand-decorated ones we'd made together the previous weekend. Our small artificial tree was adorned with a mix of conventional ornaments and handcrafted creations, reflecting our evolving traditions. "Mom?" Ethan said as I tucked him into bed. "Today was nice." "Different, but nice." "It was," I agreed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "What was your favorite part?" He thought for a moment. "When Grandpa asked to see my drawing notebook and didn't say anything about math or science. He just said I was talented." The simple observation highlighted how little it actually took to make a child feel valued. Genuine interest in who they are, not who you want them to be. I made a mental note to share this insight with my parents when the moment was right. Christmas morning, we woke to a light snowfall that transformed our neighborhood into a winter wonderland. After opening presents, we delivered cookies to elderly neighbors, then joined several other single-parent families from Ethan's school for an impromptu potluck lunch. The gathering was chaotic, informal, and filled with laughter, a stark contrast to the choreographed perfection of holiday celebrations in my childhood home. As evening fell, I received a text from Brooke, the first direct communication since the diner confrontation. "Merry Christmas. The girls loved Ethan's handmade gifts. Hope you're having a good day." Brief and somewhat stilted, but a beginning. I replied with equal care, "Merry Christmas to you all too." Ethan was thrilled with the science kit from the twins. "Enjoy your celebration." Later, after Ethan was asleep, I sat by our Christmas tree, reflecting on the journey of the past month. The painful rejection at Thanksgiving had catalyzed changes I'd been unable to initiate for years. Old patterns had been disrupted, uncomfortable truths spoken, new possibilities revealed. Nothing was perfectly resolved. My relationship with Brooke remained fragile. My father still struggled to fully understand my choices. Old habits of comparison occasionally resurfaced. But beneath these ongoing challenges ran a current of hope I hadn't felt in years. The path forward wouldn't be straight or simple. There would be missteps and backsliding, moments of frustration and doubt. But for perhaps the first time, it felt like we were all walking in the same general direction, even if at different paces. For Ethan's sake, and for my own, I was committed to this journey of healing. To building a family relationship based on acceptance rather than achievement, on love rather than comparison. To showing my son that standing up for yourself doesn't mean giving up on reconciliation. That boundaries and forgiveness can coexist. That family, both born and chosen, is worth the difficult work of rebuilding. As the year drew to a close, I found myself unexpectedly grateful for that painful Thanksgiving ejection. Sometimes it takes the breaking of something to reveal what truly matters in the rebuilding. In the spaciousness of that shattering, new growth had become possible not just for me, but for all of us. Have you ever experienced a family rejection that ultimately led to positive change? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Thank you for witnessing this chapter of our story, and may your own family journeys, however complicated, lead you toward healing and wholeness. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful growth happens in the most unexpected breaking.